Okay. It is 7 o'clock. We are going to get this meeting started. We are starting with the bond hearing. And I, of course, have my typical script to read. Today we'll be conducting a school board meeting of the Amherst School Board, as well as our budget public hearing as required. In addition, we will be holding a bond hearing as required. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chairperson of the Amherst School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that the public is able to attend in person or remotely to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order, and to provide public input during the public hearing portion of the meeting. In accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means, in addition to the in-person venue at Sohegan High School in the auditorium. For those participating electronically, we are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All other members of the committee and staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom and via phone by following the directions and links provided on our website, www.sau39.org. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email A. Wallace, that's AWALLACE, at sau39.org. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So let's get started. Ellen?
Bruton, yes, I'm in my office alone.
Josh?
Conklin, yes, in my basement alone.
Terry?
Beam, yes, in my home office alone.
Tom?
Tom Gothier, yes, I am home in my office alone.
Okay. For all members of the public, when the time comes and I open up the public hearing or bond hearing for public input, if you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom to be recognized. I'll let you know when that time comes. You will need to unmute yourself, and you will be allowed to speak. Please state your name and the road in which you live. You will have no more than 3 minutes to address the board. Again, I will let you know when that time comes. So let's get started. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm Tom Gothier. I am with the school board clearly. And so I will talk about, the first thing we'll do tonight is our actual bond hearing. Just bear with me as I pull up my notes. The sharing of the screen is not gone. Here we go. Now we're all set. So we have my notes tonight. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the big ticket item, if you will. When you go to election day in March, you're going to see a handful of articles on the ballot. After you pick your choice of school board member for a 3-year term, you'll see Article 12, and that is the school bond construction project that we've been working on for a couple of years now. The total bonded amount that we're looking for is $97,700,000 and change. And I say in change, just so I'm not reading the entire screen to you. It's certainly not to minimize the numbers that are on there. So I don't mean to make it seem like I'm doing that or being flippant. So with that out of the way, the Clark Wilkins project would be a new K through 5, pre-K through 5 elementary school that is brand new at 66 million plus. And then we would do a renovated Amherst middle school. Basically, soup to nuts in the middle school would be entirely new within the framework in the envelope that is currently there. And that's just over $31.5 million. So when you go to the ballot, this is what the warrant article will read like, and I will read it for the record here as we have to do this legally. So it's the construction bond warrant article, Article 12, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $97,718,000 as part of the gross budget, $31,680,000 for the purpose of renovation of the Amherst Middle School, and $66,038,000 for the purpose of the related new construction project for the Clark Wilkins Elementary School, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $97,718,000 of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the Municipal Bond Finance Act, RSA 33-1, whatever those two symbols mean there, as amended, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, to authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other terms thereof, and authorize the school board to take any action or pass any other vote relative thereto, and further to raise and appropriate an additional sum of $1,710,065 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. And because it's a bond article, this will require a supermajority, 3/5 of the ballot vote required at 60%. So again, the two projects, as we mentioned, the Clark Wilkins Elementary School at 66 million, and then the second part of the project, the renovated Amherst Middle School, just under $32 million. That would add a small amount of square footage to the existing envelope, only 2,000 square feet. So primarily it's the same building, but it would only be accommodating 3 grades, 6th through 8th. Now, keep in mind that we do have some calculations throughout this presentation on the tax impact and interest in those things, but these are based on a 30-year bond, just simply for numbers and perspective. We don't know what that bond is going to be, and we won't know what that's going to be until we actually sell those bonds closer to construction time, once that actually happens after everything passes. But keep in mind that the numbers that we're looking at are going to be on the 30-year basis. It could change depending on interest rates, overall payments, yearly payments. We're going to do whatever is best for the town when it comes to that. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, that the numbers will have some variance by the time we actually get to the project in the next year or so, if everything passes. So the first question that we will talk about, is how we got here. This has been a bit of a 4-year project, if you will, over the last couple of years. It started in 2017. Capital needs assessment developed to see what it would take to maintain the schools as is for the next 20 years. If we did nothing, what's it going to take to keep plumbing and electrical systems, buildings, roofs, all of that stuff up and running. In 2018, a committee of town volunteers, elected officials, SAU 39 administration, that was formed to study the history of the school buildings, looking at this capital needs assessment, what school projects had passed in the past, what failed on the ballot, what our current needs are, and what is needed to keep the facilities running for the next 20 years. So this group formed in 2018 to study that. They took all of that in consideration in 2019 and then completed its research in time to ask for a $150,000 fund to study, to propose a solution to the school problems that we discovered last year. Overcrowding, aging facilities, undersized classrooms, all of the issues that we've talked about here and that we will talk about in the coming few minutes. So that $150,000 was passed last year in March as part of the Amherst budget for the FY21 year. So over the summer, we used that $150,000 to hire LaValle Brenzinger. They're one of the leading school architects and design companies here in the state. They've done a lot of projects, including the one that passed last March over at Oyster River Middle School. So we hired them on to develop a facilities proposal. When we hired them on, so we asked them, we showed them the list of things that we were trying to solve. And these were those items. First and foremost, you can see our class sizes. This is something that we've talked about since the board made this a priority back in the 2018 school year. Simply, we don't have enough space to meet our class size goals. The graphic clearly has some of the largest class sizes in the state as of last year. Those numbers are not going down. And one of our major goals is to reduce the class sizes. There was a study a few years ago called the Tennessee STARS study, and it found that kids working in smaller class sizes had much better academic and non-academic growth, and then they performed better on standardized tests. There was better student-teacher engagement, better teacher engagement overall, and it allowed teachers to really work with kids to let them grow at their own pace, something that we've talked about here in our district. And this is particularly true at the elementary school level, giving the kids the priorities and the opportunities. That first and foremost is our main priority. So the space that we do have, you may recognize some of these pictures in a lot of different places. We've worked with this committee, the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee, over the last year and a half, and we had some of these photos at last year's public hearing and deliberative session, but they're certainly worth revisiting again to refresh your memory or to highlight what we're looking at and why we're taking this step, which is certainly not something that we take lightly. So first and foremost, if you go clockwise, starting in the upper left-hand corner, that is a triangle or a wedged shaped classroom, and I'll have a little bit more on that in just a minute. Inefficient rooms, these rooms at Amherst Middle School, that maneuverable wall on the left-hand side, a lot of these don't even work. Some are broken, they don't shut all the way, so you have noise going back and forth, and they don't lend themselves to really heat-efficient spaces. The top middle picture, that is an intervention space, which is shared by multiple interventionists. So if you have two kids in there that are trying to work one-on-one with an interventionist, no doubt they're going to hear each other. And at that point, is it really one-on-one? Is it any different than being, in that one-on-one atmosphere in a classroom? On the upper right, it's our favorite photo. It's the portables. These have proven to be extremely expensive to acquire. They're difficult to maintain, disconnected from the building, and they're certainly not fully integrated into the school security systems. We have two now in the school system. Many years ago, we had a lot more. They were able to get rid of some of them, which has partly led to the crowding situation we have now as enrollment went down, but has now come back up in a variety of other factors. And we'll talk about how expensive they are a little bit later on. In the bottom right, the elementary cafeteria, this blue and white banner, that is a shared curtain between that and a gym class. So scheduling things at the same time as lunch creates issues for noise level between gym or PE and the lunchroom. Bottom middle, lockers, those two ones on the left probably don't keep many things secure unless you want to just glue that door on the left and stick it in one of those empty cubes. And then in the bottom left, this is a mechanical closet essentially built into, and I say built very loosely, it's plywood on studs about the extent of my building capability. That is part of the classroom, and that is certainly valuable square footage that's taken away from learning space to hide, it's an electrical or a mechanical component right behind that wall. So that is part of the issue that we have with some of these classrooms, is that they're just not well designed, and the space we have certainly isn't being used all that well. Other issues we have in the school, particularly in the elementary school, teachers on carts. So some of the specialty teachers, technology, music, they go classroom to classroom instead of having their own dedicated space. Music in particular, you can imagine, is an issue. If you have a class and next door they're doing music, we all know what that's like to have kids playing in our house on their instruments or just making noise. A bathroom here in one of the portables has a printer in it, a desk, and a heater, and then all these nice chemicals down there as well. So certainly not a very safe, inviting atmosphere in one of those portable buildings. This is AMS, plenty of leakage right now in the roof. You have up in the ceiling, and these pictures are about a year old now, maybe a year and a half, but you have leaking through the roof, and you certainly have water damage on the exterior envelope of this building due to leaking roofs as well. And then I mentioned the interior classrooms, those triangle classrooms. This is your usable space, this highlighted circle, 500 to 600 square feet. The DOE recommends 36 square feet per kid or 900 square feet. So you can see certainly a lot of wasted space in this classroom as we try to get kids in there. So those are the issues that we were trying to cover. And when we worked with LaValle Brenzinger, we said, these are the priorities that we have. Functional spaces that allow us to meet board target class size goals. We want to address all the aging end-of-life systems and replace them with energy efficient systems. You may not know, or you may have forgotten, but these buildings, AMS and Clark Wilkins, are both 50 plus years old. AMS is 48 and Clark Wilkins is 53. So certainly end of life for the buildings, let alone the mechanical systems inside of them. We wanted flexible teaching spaces, secure and technologically rich environments to match the 21st century and match 2021. And then we certainly want to use the existing sites efficiently because it's a lot more expensive to acquire a new site and do all the prep work that needs to be done there when you have all the groundwork sort of laid in your sites right now. So we had three options that we had. One, we knew we had kicking the can down the road, fixing aging systems. We had the option of renovating and refurbishing, and we had the option of building new for the two projects that we talked with LaValle Brenzinger about. So for AMS, we decided to go with the renovate refurbish option, roughly the same price as kicking the can and about half the price of building a new school altogether. So the reason that we chose this, you look at, again, the pricing on this, if you kick the can down the road, these are all systems on the left-hand side of your screen that need to be replaced at some point. They're at the end of their life, they're energy inefficient, or they're just not functional. So kitchen equipment, lighting, HVAC, those are the big ticket items. If you renovate and refurbish it, you keep the same structure, you're able to modify your classrooms, you create a like new facility, you replace all of these aging systems, you're able to locate the 5th grade to the elementary school. And that really is kind of the pivot point on this entire project, is moving 5th grade down to a new Clark Wilkins school. You can phase it with the elementary school. And again, you're just creating a much better educational space. You're getting special education areas, collaboration areas, in spaces where these students have more room to roam. We did look at a new option, $59 million, double the price. Certainly didn't think that it was necessary to go that way. So I will let you know we have a website. So either if I go too fast, you miss something, or you want to go back and look at things between now and deliberative and election day over the next 2 months, the website, we'll have it at the end. It's jfac.sau39.org. And it has all of these floor plans. It has the facility studies. You can look at all of this and look at all the reasoning that went into the decisions that we're presenting here tonight. So this right here is the what the exterior of kind of the overhead view of what AMS would look like. The only addition is this small area, the secure main entrance addition. Everything else is current footprint that we have in the school. If you go to this next slide, this is what we're currently working with. Pretty much half the classrooms, if not more, are these wedge-shaped classrooms. And as we mentioned, walls are broken, dividing walls. They're not soundproof. There's limited storage space, a lot of shared space for special ed curriculum, a lot of shared space for intervention areas. This makes it very difficult to match the quality education system that we're trying to put together in this town, and we have been for the last few years. These are all deterrents to that. So what the new space would look like is much cleaner, and using that same footprint, we create basically 6 team areas. So the 6th through 8th grade, they work in teams of 4, the teachers do. So essentially it gives us 8 classrooms at each grade broken up into 2 teams for each grade, and hence we'll have 6 wings. These 1, 2, 3 here, these are the classrooms. Each one of these little pods has a language space, it has a guidance space, it has access to the media center nearby, humanities and science area. This gives you a lot more space and a lot better use of the space, and all of these classrooms are much better designed for what we need today. And it also keeps these teachers, when they're working as a team, they have areas to meet, and they have areas to meet to develop their curriculums as they're working together. We also have in the center of this building sort of revamped this, what once was just a big square. This is now sort of the architectural highlight. You come in the main entrance and you see this big media center and learning commons. You have the media center and the computer lab on the bottom. And then on the top, there's my time space, some of the intervention one-on-one space at the top where kids can get extra work and really get some of that one-on-one intervention that is critical to a lot of kids being able to succeed in to the best of their ability. So over on the right side, you have the gym, new locker rooms, and then certainly the new music rooms up at the top there with much more storage space and much better layouts than what we have now. And if you look at the second floor, you see more of these pod areas, pods, teams, whatever you want to call them. But again, language areas, science areas, the math, the classrooms, everybody has their own sort of central space where they can stay and they can work in that team, really kind of mimicking the atmosphere we have this year, albeit in that COVID environment. If you look at the next couple of slides, just highlighting, what we have now, what we're getting rid of. We're going to end up with one less classroom in the new school, but when you take away 5th grade, and you add a couple of thousand square feet, you're going to have 30 properly sized classrooms in 6 teams, getting rid of the 31 classrooms for 4 grades, where you had a lot bigger class sizes. And then as you go to the next one, you're adding in that common area in the center of the building, the media center, the learning commons, the My Time space, the computer labs, and of course, special education areas, small group learning areas. You relocate that main office, you create a new secure main entrance, and of course, all of the end-of-life systems, parking, windows, roof, you name it, it's all getting done in that project. As we go back to the village area, we're talking about Clark Wilkins, and we had those same 3 options. We can kick the can, we can renovate or refurbish, or we're able to build a new school. And as you can see on the slide there, we chose to build a new school for this. And primarily, again, you go down to cost and what you're getting for it. It's about $64.5 million to renovate and refurbish, and about $66 million, just over that amount, to be able to build a new school. And the reasons for that, again, look at all the items we have to do in the kick the can. These items are coming no matter what. If you look back at this slide, $23 million, that's what all these projects will cost just to keep it up with what we have now. And if you keep in mind what Wilkins is now, it's 1 through 4. We don't have a lot of room to reduce our class sizes, and we're operating 2 buildings with Clark School and kindergarten over there. That means 2 administrations, 2 kitchens, 2 libraries, et cetera, et cetera. If we renovated and refurbished, that may have been the initial idea, because Amherst Middle School, you'll notice, is about half the price of a new school. The big problem here is that Wilkins is not expandable into you can't renovate Wilkins into a building to host 6 grades pre-K through 5. So what you have to do is you have to build an entirely new structure behind the current Wilkins school. You keep Wilkins school as it is for some of the kids. You have more in the back building, and then essentially you're adding a 3rd building to the portfolio here for the school district. And certainly we're not reducing inefficiencies at that point. We're just adding to that with another administration office and more space that we have to have administrators, teachers, specialists, special education teachers bouncing around between buildings, which is the ultimate, the epitome of inefficiency. And so if you created one school, you can stack it, you can reduce the footprint, you can build it vertically, which is more energy efficient, which is cheaper. And certainly with a new school system, that is the way that we chose to go. So you see on the left-hand side, 34 general classrooms that we have now between 2 buildings, and really 4 buildings if you count the 2 portables. And then on the right-hand side, the new building, much bigger, but you're getting 56 general classrooms, 9 at each grade from kindergarten through 5th, and then 2 pre-K kindergartens that will solve a lot of our space issues down there. Comparing to the current, some of the shared space, you have a multi-purpose room at each building right now, Clark and Wilkins. There is no kitchen at Clark, so right there automatically every day lunch people have to bring food from Wilkins to Clark, serve it with volunteers. Not efficient. Library in each building, art and music in each building. And again, you're looking at 77,000 square feet of space right there, which certainly isn't enough to meet the goals that our board in town have set. So what we're doing is combining all of those common areas. We'll actually have 2 music rooms and 2 art rooms to deal with a bigger school and more kids. And then all of these things, again, a common area in the center of the building highlighted by the media center, more special education areas, more group learning areas, and all of the new systems that'll be energy efficient and lower costs over the course of the next 20 to 30 years. This is what the overhead view of the property will look like. If you're familiar with Wilkins, there is a field right here now up in the front. This will be a new athletic field, and you can see this faint dotted line. This is the footprint that we currently have for Wilkins right now. So the new school, all but this very little front bit of it, is going to go in that back field behind Wilkins, so we can build this school while keeping regular Wilkins up to house these kids and to act as a transition space as we work on AMS and as we get this building open as well. So that is a big efficiency right there, allowing us to do both projects at one time. This is what the school looks like. This is that big field that's up on the hill that connects to Jones Road. Obviously, future mock-ups will have the hill built in there for perspective. This is what it looked like in the front. And again, Wilkins currently ends right about through the center of this front part where the administration offices will be. All of this green space will have the playground, outdoor classrooms, and outdoor gathering areas for kids. And then this is a lot of the common area that's going to be up there for the schools. Just a street level view of the front entrance as well as we look at this one. This is what it's going to look like inside the building as it stands right now, from front to back. The administration offices, guidance and special ed, a nice big open space for them to have to work with, in addition to the other nooks and crannies for special education throughout the building. nurse and wellness office right in the front, your big secure entrance, which is going to be brand new as we go through this. This is the nice feature for the shared space. It's one gymnasium, but it can be subdivided into two, so you can ease the schedule, having 2 gym classes at the same time, which are bigger than the current gym at Wilkins anyway. Over here is a cafeteria with the stage, and then one of 2 big music rooms off to the side right here. So the only thing music's going to interrupt is lunch, and I don't think anybody's really going to have a concern with that. This is the bottom level, the back end of that building, that long appendage that sticks out the back there. 9 rooms for first grade, 9 for kindergarten. There is 1 art room on this floor. The youngsters have to be on the first floor, so as we go up higher, the grades get older. Second floor will have 2nd and 3rd grade with a computer lab with my time space, and then these rooms here are for intervention space as well, for special ed space, more space to be able to provide those services that this school district has really embraced. In the back, you have the art room, and then in the front here, technology education, which is done in classrooms, or at least it was last year, plus your media center, and then another music room right up here as well. And then on the 3rd floor, just your 4th and 5th graders, but again, that same layout, 9 classrooms, intervention space, my time, and the maker space up there as well. So the next question that I'm sure everybody's thinking about, besides the big one that we'll get to in a minute, is what about Clark? In the short term, we're going to need it still, because this building is not going to be ready until 2024 at the earliest. AMS would be 2025. So it's still going to be a school. And then as we get Clark Wilkins more complete, we can use it as a swing space during construction to be able to move kids around and house them in a permanent place while something else is getting built. And then long term, really the possibilities are endless. Community center, if there's private development, a variety of things that will go through the town and the community to really get input on what the best use of Clark is, which has been an institution in this town for going on 90 years now. So as we continue on, some of the other questions that we have, why do both projects at the same time? Why do any project in this climate right now? And we understand that, but these are needs that we know we need, and the needs aren't going away. If we wait 1 year, 5 years, 7 years, it's not going to matter. We need to do these buildings. This has been kicked down the road for many, many years for a variety of different reasons. But the time is now. So we wanted to get this ball rolling. We really feel strongly in this project that it's the right thing to do now. To do them at the same time, it's primarily a cost savings thing. And so while it looks like it's more, if you look at the project for AMS, Clark Wilkins has to be done first. We can't move 5th graders into Wilkins as it is now. So we can't do AMS without Clark Wilkins being done. But by combining them, it's a more of an upfront cost, but we're saving those costs, saving that money down the road. AMS is probably going to go up by $1 million to $1.5 million a year if you're basing off the 4 to 5% construction increase every year. Safely at 5%, maybe it's 4%, but compounding in 5 years, it's an extra 6 to 7 million, and then you're looking at another 10 to 12 million in a decade. So it's a lot more money down the road, and that's if interest rates stay where they are right now at about 2%, a little under 2%. If those go up, which they're probably going to, I mean, bond rates are historically low right now. They don't really have much opportunity to go down any further. So if they continue to go up as expected, that's only going to add on to the cost as well. And then by doing projects together, we save them some of those soft costs. The hard construction costs don't change. It's steel is X dollars per square foot or per ton, however they measure it. But permitting, project managers, insurance, if you have people that can work on 2 buildings at the same time, you're saving a lot of money and you're saving time doing this in a much truncated period compared to a 5 or 10 year project down the road. The interest rate, it varies. It's going to depend on what the municipal bond market does, but right now it's about 1.97 on a 30-year bond. Loan is the incorrect word there. It is a bond. Interest rates are certainly low. So as borrowing goes, it's advantageous as ever right now. And if you go to the anticipated interest payment, about 1.7 million the first year, and then it'll dwindle down to 60,000 in the last year. Again, based off a 30-year bond repayments calendar. And based off things as they are at this minute, but it could certainly change as we go forward. Next question is, can we apply for state aid? Yes, but we don't know how much we'll get, and we won't get anything until July of 2023. Very strict rules to apply for state aid or federal aid. 75 to 100% done in your plans. You basically have to be shovel ready to go. You have to do that after the bond passes in the town. And then we don't know what we're going to get before the vote. So yes, we'll apply for every bit of funding that we can. We just don't know when that's going to come in, and we don't know what that amount is going to be. Energy costs, quite a bit of significant savings here. We're at about $1.60 right now, square foot per year. We're looking at the US average is about $1.50, and we're hoping to be down to about $1 per square foot for a high performance school, which we have every intention of this being. So highlighting those kick the can costs, this just lays it out a little bit more itemized. You see this big $15 million tag. That's a big one. That's all the HVAC, ceiling structures, et cetera. That's the one that is really going to need to be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years. You have a lot of deferred maintenance that we've done as we try to figure out what's the best way to approach this. All of these costs add up with portables, keep in mind, because we don't have enough space to do what we want to do right now. You're looking at roughly 25 to 30 million. And the picture is not any brighter at Clark Wilkins. Another 6 to 10 million in mechanical systems between the two buildings. You have windows, plumbing, food service equipment, all the deferred maintenance that we've looked at, security systems. And then the big ticket item on this one, where we really need the portables, where that STARS study in small class sizes really has the greatest impact at this elementary level, upwards of 12 million if we were to truly take advantage of every bit of space we have and maximize our class size goals. You're looking at quite a bit of millions in terms of portable classrooms, which again, hard to get, expensive, and it's a trailer. So it's 25 million there. So for 60 million, we can stay at the status quo. In 98 million, very simplistic way of breaking it down. I get that, but that's part of what into the decision making that the board took. So tax impacts, this is the one that everybody has been waiting for, including ourselves and the board, because we all live here, we all pay tax as well. But an average value of a home at 350,000, you're looking at roughly $1,000 per year, $3 per day if you break it down that way. But we are able to, by doing it this way, at $3 $3 tax rate increase per thousand this is what your typical bond repayment schedule could look like. And this is the way we want to stagger it up by doing the projects at the same time. Starts out high, and then as we go forward, it sort of dwindles it down between the blue at Clark Wilkins and the red at AMS. Now this yellow project, this is Sauhegan 2.0, but you'll see where if we start off at that $3 rate, even if we added a Sauhegan project, which has been in the works for a handful of years now, that would still stay under that $3 tax rate, and it would dwindle down over time. The one benefit of keeping this level tax impact and then dwindling it down over time, we have no spikes. So it's not like we have $3 here, it dwindles down, and we go to $4 when AMS comes up, and then it dwindles down. We keep a nice steady level impact that tails off. And then we also, in the early years, we can build up some capital reserve fund savings, because that's still money that we're going to need to fix these schools. We all have new houses. We've seen new cars. They all have issues. They all have things that you need to replace and fix that just don't go quite according to how you planned it. And one of the big things that we don't have right now is that savings account to dip into. So this would help us build that savings account early on. Then we can use that for future projects. We can also use that money to help pay off some of the bond debt as we go down the line later on. So there are advantages to keep that level the first few years, and then as it naturally dwindles, letting that tax impact go down over time as well. The one last thing I will touch upon, maybe two last things, property values, something that we talked about in our meetings that is really highlighted by this, this chart here. We looked at all the towns that we commonly compare ourselves with over the last 10 years in terms of the Goffstown, Pelhams, Nashuas, Hollises, Bedford, Windhams. Property valuations, the average home price, and you look at the growth here over the course of a 10-year period. Amherst and Mount Vernon, our district, is at the bottom of this list of 13 towns. The schools that are at the top that have seen upwards of 45 to 55% increases, they have new schools. Bow, Pelham, Hollis, Windham, Bedford. Those are the towns that have really invested in their schools, and they've seen their property values really skyrocket, way more than we have, in some cases almost double the growth that we've had over the last 10 years. So is it A automatically equals B? Not necessarily. A variety of factors come into that, but it's certainly correlated to that. And that's one of the things that we look forward to, we're excited about with this, is that we can get more valuation in the town, but we also have people that are looking to sell in the next couple of years. They can get more on their homes, and then people that are here that have kids, they certainly reap the benefits of the new school system as well. So as win-wins go, as bond issues go, this is as close to a win-win, as we would like it to be. Quick look at the timeline. Vote on it in March. Construction could start possibly next spring, and then spring of 24, Clark Wilkins is done. Summer of 25, AMS is done. And again, I mentioned that website, jfac.sau39.org. Frequently asked questions. You have site plans that we have up there right now for all the buildings. You can see the full plans. And then you can really take a look at that current building report, because that's what really led to this, with the amount of work that we need to do to the buildings that we have to get them up to snuff. And I haven't really mentioned COVID very much, but we've realized the impact of airflow. We've realized the impact of having bigger classrooms with less kids in them, all factors that lead to the spread of COVID. We've done well with it right now because we're running 15 kids in a classroom for the remote classes. It's a much better size, much better teacher and student engagement, but it's certainly not feasible with the buildings we have when we return to normal next year. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will toss it back over to Ms. Kuzma.
Thank you very much, Tom. So now we'll be opening this bond hearing up for public comment. Please remember, use the raise your hand feature. Once I call on you, you can unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes to address the board. And you also need to state your name and the street that you live on, since this is a public meeting. Thank you. Okay. Jake Redden, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, this is Jake Redden on Douglas. Thanks. Great presentation, obviously. I feel like we may be getting the cart ahead of the horse with the world and its drastic changes that we've seen over the last 12 months. My question is, do we need this type of investment if we don't really know how long our current environment is going to go? And with the on again, off again remote environment, it just seems like a lot of money to be spending on something when maybe our trust in the ability to keep kids in school is draining rapidly from the school system. Thank you.
Tom?
I would certainly say that we're probably not changing the way that education runs in our town, whether it's in a private school or whether it's in in a public school, whether it's next year or the year after. I think at some point, for the sanity of parents, I think some point for the sanity of kids, we're going to be back in classrooms. I know I'm certainly not qualified to teach my kids at home for homeschooling. And I think we've all agreed, let me rephrase it. I personally think that remote, while a good substitute, certainly doesn't qualify for the real thing. So unless we somehow can come up with like a third way to educate kids, I think we're going to be back in schools at some point. Now, some parents may want to reevaluate their own individual systems, but our population is growing and the classroom needs that we have now just don't fit for what we currently have, let alone what we have, in 2 or 3 years, even at 90% or 95% of what comes back. So unless they come up with a new way to educate kids, I don't foresee that changing, whether it's next September or the September after, but at some point, I think we go back to normal.
Thank you. I'm going to wait just a moment to allow other attendees to use the raise their hand feature. Okay, Victoria Parisi.
Hi, Victoria Parisi of Church Street in Amherst. I'm the chair of the Amherst School District Ways and Means Committee. The role of our committee is to review the budget and warrant articles and make recommendations to the residents of Amherst based on an informed understanding of the facts while determining what makes the most sense in the short and long term. The Ways and Means Committee would like to commend the Amherst School Board for their attention to their board goals and their forward long-term planning for the needs of the facilities. While our committee acknowledges that the bond is a very large sum of money, we also acknowledge that the buildings have several systems nearing end of life that will continue to cost a significant amount to replace in the future. For that reason and several others, the Ways and Means Committee has taken a preliminary vote to support the bond article 6-0. Additional details about this vote and all others can be found by reading the Ways and Means minutes on the SAU website under Finance Committee. The process is that after the articles are ready for the ballot, Ways and Means will share our final votes and theory in the voter's guide that will be shared with all residents of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Wait another moment for anybody else that would like to speak to raise their hands. We can have more than one person line up at a time too, if that is handy, and I would just call in the order that they came in. Okay, seeing no more comments from the public, I would just like to let everybody know that the school board will be taking its final vote on language, as well as the recommendation to move this on to deliberative at our next board meeting, which is January 19th, which is this coming Tuesday. I will now be closing the public hearing and moving on to, sorry, I'll be closing the bond hearing and moving on to our public hearing. Tom, you also have this.
Okay, so let me share my screen again, get that set up. Just have patience with me while we do that. So we thank everybody for coming again tonight. I did not say that earlier. I know that it's convenient to come to these now in the system that we're operating in, but it certainly is not the same feeling that you get normally when you get to address these things in person. We feel it the same way as you guys do, but we certainly appreciate everybody logging on tonight. So we're going to talk about the overall budget and the other warrant articles that you'll see on the ballot when you go into the ballot box in May. And we focused this year on, there are 4 areas of focus, as you'll see the things that are up for warrant articles from from the bond article for the new buildings all the way through the last article on the ballots, 12 through 16. Number 1 goal was to pass the budget, obviously, that supports the initiatives that we're working on, particularly class size. We want to continue to support that capital reserve fund that we started refunding again last year. Our 10-year agreement with Mount Vernon was up, so we had to renew that lease agreement this year. We've done that, and we'll have that to present to voters in March. And then we want to pass that bond that we just talked about for the new buildings, for the 2 long-term building needs that we just talked about in the actual bond hearing. So these are the 5 articles that you'll see when you go into the ballot box: the actual budget, the capital reserve fund, the tuition agreement with Mount Vernon. We have a lease agreement for the SAU 39 building. That's the brick school where the administration works out of on a daily basis. And then, of course, the bond for the elementary and middle school projects there. So Article 13, this is the actual budget article that will appear on the ballot. And for posterity's sake, we will read this into the record as well. Article 13. Shall the Amherst School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $30,579,864,000. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $30,129,704, which is the same as last year, aka the year that we're currently in, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Amherst School District or by law, or by the governing body, may hold 1 special meeting in accordance with RSA 40, 13X and 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget. This one will just require a simple majority vote, just over that 50% mark. So this is what our FY22 proposed budget looks like. This is what we're currently operating under, $28,900,000, and we will go to $30,579,864, as we just mentioned. It's about a $1.6 million increase, roughly 5.5%. And it breaks down, these are the areas where you see a lot of that 1.5 million. This is the areas where you see the increasing. Special services, AMS, and Clark Wilkins. The bulk of this, let me go back. The bulk of that $1.2 million and change is staff salaries and benefits, which we will highlight in just a minute, but there are some programming things in there as well. Facilities and technology. Facilities has some staffing, and the technology is one of our major focuses on this budget that we'll explain again in a big minute. Those are the other 2 areas of major increase. The major decreases this year, new bus contracts, so the transportation number goes down a little bit, which is nice to see. School nutrition services goes down again, and then the capital items, about $190,000. We mentioned it in the bond hearing tonight that $150,000 of that was the study on what we should do with our current buildings. Next slide is a good reminder that it's $30.5 million. It's a big number. 29.7 million is smaller. It's not a ton smaller, but that is the actual part that is funded by taxes. The other 800,000 is self-funded for the food service, or it's that grant that's in there. So your taxes only go to the general fund. Again, about a 1.56 million increase, 5.5%, but it's not quite that full 30,600,000 number that you'll see under the overall budget there. Of course, we talk about our main goals. We've mentioned it a couple of times tonight. but it is the class sizes. This is one of our main goals. You look at the current enrollment, and there is an asterisk involved in all of this. So whenever you hear me talk about this stuff, or anybody talking about things on a normal basis tonight, it's certainly not the year that we're in now. We mentioned it earlier, some of these classes have 15 kids in them, and then there are kids teaching remotely, and we have 9 teachers working on a grade level, hence the number, the average of 15 kids. It's certainly not the case. We can't do that in buildings. We don't have the space for that. So if everybody's in the school, you'll look at what our current enrollment is, 20 plus kids in each of 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And then we have 15 and 17 down on in the lower levels at this point as well. And again, these numbers are skewed because we have some kids that are doing homeschooling this year as well. And the same for the middle school, the class sizes increase. We would like to lower the class sizes for next year when everybody's back in the classroom. You can see that we're going to keep the same number of teachers in Clark Wilkins, 33, but we will increase, or we're proposing to increase by 2 teachers, a 5th grade and a 6th grade teacher at the middle school level, to give us 1 extra teacher there and reduce these class size numbers down much closer to our goals, and in these cases, right on our goals. If we don't do that, then we're looking at upwards of 25 to 26 kids, way too big in that 5th and 6th grade level. So this is the slide that we're working on right here. And again, those are projection enrollments. Enrollments projections are the only thing that we know about them is that they're probably going to be wrong in some capacity, especially at the kindergarten level, and especially this year where COVID-19 has come in, and parents have had some tough decisions to make because of COVID. If they're in private preschool, if they're in private kindergarten, if they're going to do kindergarten next year, if they're going to stay back a year, if they're homeschooling. So the one thing I can promise you is 2 things. Number 1, the enrollment projections will be off in some capacity. And number 2, we will only hire the teachers that we actually need next year. So if we come back with 100 kids in kindergarten, we're not going to hire 7 teachers. That number will be lowered, and that'll be a cost savings there because 100 teachers for, or 7 teachers for 100 kids is well below the target levels that we're aiming to reach. And it's like that for any grade. If we don't need the teachers, we won't hire them. We've talked to the administration at our last meeting, or I should say our meeting in December, that when we get a better idea as to what the numbers will be in March and April, we're going to revisit all of these. Nothing will be guaranteed if the budget passes. We're going to look at all these positions, and then we're going to say, this is what we need to hire. We don't need to hire this. And that includes teachers, full-time teaching positions, as well as the full-time paraprofessionals as well. So the number's a little big, but just know that we are going to look at that and really only hire to need once we know what those numbers are. Couple of notes on the staffing changes. You can see the numbers here. There were 2 proposed teachers. Those are the 2 that we mentioned in 5th and 6th grade, about $100,000 each. Final numbers will come in once we get the actual salary of the teacher, and then we also get the what the final health percentage increase is as well, but roughly $100,000 budgeted for each. Now, the mandated position you see there, it's technically an additional teacher. We're not counting it like that because this teacher is already in the building. It is a special ed teaching position that we had to bring on last year on an emergency basis because of an individual student's needs. So because of that, we were able to get a grant for that. That carried over into this year, but because we have that student and those needs continue, it is no longer considered an emergency, and it is no longer considered grant eligible. So this is something that we are going to have to fund ourselves going forward. So technically it's a teacher added, but and technically it's going to go onto the budget, but it's not something that we have the option of doing because we do have those individual needs. We have the needs for that position, which is already being currently funded. So it's not in the budget as an added teacher because it's already here, but it is a teacher that we're going to be responsible for salary-wise next year. The other 2 big factors on the staffing budget drivers on the right-hand side of the screen here, we mentioned the health insurance. We budgeted for a 6.2 max increase for health. That's what we've been told for health insurance, a max increase at that. Hopefully the number will be lower. We'll know more of that in the spring. There is no increase for dental, which is certainly a good thing. But the one thing we don't have a choice on, and the one thing that we can't do anything about and that we are responsible for, is the New Hampshire retirement system. Every 2 years, they look at this system and they determine what each employer has to pay into the system and what employees have to pay. Teachers pay 7% of their salary into the state retirement system. The school district is responsible currently for 17.8%. That number is going up over 3 points next year to 21+%. So that's over $600,000 that we have to contribute to the New Hampshire retirement fund. So when you see our default budget later on, that's a big reason why that number is so high and why we have to add that on for next year because of that retirement system increase. Last thing I'll touch upon for the budget in Article 13 is our other big area of focus here. And again, certainly something highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic with a lot of kids, either all kids or some kids in remote over the last 10 months. And simply, we need more and we need upgraded devices in the classrooms. When everybody was remote last year, we had a lot of computer issues, and the administration and the technology staff did a great job of bridges and patching things together to get kids through the end of that school year. It's been better this year because we haven't had as many kids in remote, but there is still a big need for computers at both AMS and Clark Wilkins. At AMS, we will be starting a one-to-one laptop program for 5th grade through 8th grade, and that will mirror what they do at Souhegan. Now, 5th graders next year, the new part of this program, being that it's a one-to-one program, it will be something where we ask the parents to make a deposit. We believe it's going to be $100 on their computer, and they'll pay for $100 of that $300 computers. This computer will be theirs through the 4 years. That $100 fee will cover any warranty and damages that need to be covered over that 4 years. And at the end of 8th grade, when they graduate, they will get to keep that computer. And every year thereon, we'll do the same thing. We'll make sure that the 5th grade has all new computers, and that cycle will go through every 4 years with a cost for the computers, but then some of that offset by the 5th graders, quote unquote, purchasing their computer in that initial year. There are other laptop needs for teachers that are all over 5 years old. And we all know that laptops age like dogs. 5 years in human years is probably 50 in computer years. So there are a lot of laptops at both schools that need to be replaced. They will also be looking to replace projectors and then miscellaneous things like headphones, earbuds, printers, et cetera. The total cost at AMS will be about $105,000. Total cost at Clark Wilkins is a little bit less because we don't have that one-to-one system. It's about $61,000 at Clark Wilkins. It'll be 75 new student laptops, iPads for kindergarten, 15 staff laptops, and again, those miscellaneous things that we need, headphones, earbuds, all those things that we used back in the spring and that are continuing to use right now. And ideally, we'll have the option of using again if something happens where we need to go remote for a period of time, whether it's a snow day or whether it's something more severe that we've seen here over the last year. So, but $160,000 in technology, that is the other big focus that we have this year and the other big increase that you will see in the budget on election day. One final note, I didn't mention it for AMS, but we're talking about 175 student laptops to supply the 5th grade and then to supply, get rid of some of those that are 4 and 5 years old at AMS as well. So I will stop it here and I will turn it again back over to Ms. Kuzma.
Actually, if you would like to just keep sharing, you can share for the couple of default slides and then I'll take over after that.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'll just let you know when to switch.
Okay.
The default budget calculation is a legally defined calculation as defined in RSA 40:13(9)(b). The calculation takes last year's approved budget as a starting point. From there, it removes all one-time expenditures, takes all contractual obligations into consideration, such as the staff and teacher contracts and any increases or decreases to debt services. Keeping that in mind, we have removed $203,000 in one-time expenditures for classroom furniture, the gym wall mats, and the architectural engineering fees from last year. We also had a roughly $29,000 reduction in debt services and a $65,000 reduction in the transfers to the food services fund. We're heading into the final year of a 4-year agreement with the teachers and the 4th year of a 5-year agreement with the support staff. These contractual obligations result in $466,000 in salary increases between both collective bargaining agreements. There's also an added $69,000 in other employee benefits that are outlined in the collective bargaining agreement. Our health insurance carrier, as Tom already mentioned, gave us a guaranteed maximum increase of 6.3% this year, which is an increase of $104,000. And as also mentioned, unfortunately, this year is the increase year for the New Hampshire retirement system. Every 2 years, they increase the rate that schools and municipalities pay into the program. This rate that we have is we have absolutely no control over, and participation is mandated. This year, the rate went up to 21.02%, which is an increase of $572,000 to our default budget. Lastly, we have an increase of just over $56,000 for special ed out of district costs. And we are hiring that one new special ed teacher that is required to meet the needs of various students' IEPs. We felt that it is more fiscally responsible and to the benefit of students to hire one teacher rather than sending several students out of district to have their needs met. This year, in the everything else category, is our share of an increase to the SAU budget, which as a result of the same health insurance and New Hampshire retirement system increases that we have in our budget, the SAU budget has gone up. The decrease to the there is a decrease to the bus contract, which we were able to negotiate as part of a new contract agreement. And there is a transfer to the food services fund. Yes, it negates out the first one, the reduction in the first one. Overall, these changes are an increase of $29,000. Can you change the slide? Thanks. Nope, back one. There you go. All of this brings us to a default calculation of $30,129,704. This is $1,143,387 over this year's current budget, or an increase of 3.9%. The difference between the default and the proposed budget is 1.6%, or $405,000. Next. And I just want to highlight that this area in red is the area that we're talking about for the difference between the proposed and default. So you can stop sharing. Before we move on to the other warrant articles, I'm going to again open this up to the public for discussion on the budget. Please remember to state your name and your the name of your street, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. Please use the raise your hand feature. And once I call on you, you'll be able to unmute yourself and make your statement. So I'll wait just a moment for everybody to raise their hand that wants to. And feel free to raise your hand while others are speaking as well. And I'll just call on people as they come in. Okay. So seeing nobody from the public wishing to speak, I will I will move on to the next warrant articles. Let me just bring up that area of the presentation and then I will share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this or are you seeing a black screen?
We can see.
Okay, thank you. All right. Where's that one over there? Okay. So this year's, we are asking for an additional add to the capital facilities expendable trust fund. I'll be referring to it as the capital reserve fund. So the reading of the warrant article is, shall the Amherst School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $500,000 to be added to the Amherst School District Capital Facilities Repair, Maintenance, and Improvements Expendable Trust Fund for repairing, maintaining, and improving capital facilities previously established in March of 2003. This sum to come from the June 30th, 2021 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2021. No amount to be raised in new taxation. Majority vote required. Last year, the board brought forward a 20-year plan for a capital reserve fund that would be used to save money to put towards high-cost repairs and maintenance for the to the schools. Last year, we asked for $300,000 to be added to the fund, and we asked for new tax dollars to do this. This year, we're asking for $500,000 to be added to this fund, but we're asking for the funds to come from the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. So this means no amount will be raised from new taxes. As we have already discussed tonight, our buildings are aging and have aging and failing systems in them. I know we're asking for a significant amount of money for new construction at Clark Wilkins and significant renovations at AMS. So asking for additional funds to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund might seem counterintuitive, but we can't stop planning for the future and putting all of our eggs in one basket. As you can see, in the next 5 years, we have over $4 million worth of repairs that need to be made in our schools. If we wait to save, this will have a serious impact on taxpayers. The great part is that we are able to use money from this fund if construction is approved. So any money we save now will mean less money that we have to bond, which saves a lot of money in the long run. As mentioned last year, the cost of repairs in any given year fluctuates drastically, with some years needing only $10,000 in repairs, and other years needing over $2 million in repairs. To stabilize the impact to taxpayers, our plan is to add funds to a reserve fund every year so that we can build up enough money over the years to cover the cost as they come due, rather than hitting taxpayers hard some years but not others. A plan has been drafted in coordination with Sauhegan to have a somewhat stable impact each year between the two districts. If the bond passes this year, the $4 million that you saw on the previous slide and the amounts for all of the years after that you don't see will be addressed as part of the construction and renovations. Until then, we need to care for the facilities that we have. Let me stop sharing. Again, I will open the floor up to the public. If anybody wishes to speak, please use the raise your hand feature and I will call on you. You can unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Okay, so seeing none, I will share my screen again and we will move on to the Mount Vernon tuition agreement. Okay. Okay. So this year we have the Mount Vernon tuition agreement that we spent the fall renegotiating. Here is the wording for the warrant article. Shall the school district approve a new 5-year tuition agreement with the Mount Vernon School District to allow for continued education of the Mount Vernon students at the Amherst Middle School beginning July 1st, 2021, in accordance with the proposed tuition agreement on file with the school district clerk. Majority vote required. The current tuition agreement with Mount Vernon, which was a 10-year agreement, is set to expire on July 1st. During negotiations for a new agreement, we spent a lot of time finding a better way to calculate the tuition rate that Mount Vernon pays us because the current way is convoluted and time-consuming. The current per student tuition rate for Mount Vernon students is a calculation that uses a modified cost per pupil calculation that we report to the state that removes this, that, and the other thing, and then adds some of it back in, but only parts of some of those items. It's really hard and it's extremely time consuming for our staff. Added to that, the average daily membership of Amherst students compared to Mount Vernon students is used. Both the per student tuition rate and the number of students is calculated 5 times every year per the agreement to make sure that each quarter Mount Vernon is paying their fair share with a true up calculation at the end of the year. As you can imagine, this is extremely labor intensive process for our business office and makes budgeting extremely difficult for both towns. Mount Vernon is never able to accurately identify their unreserved fund balance or be able to know whether they need to go on a spending freeze until very late in the year. And for Amherst, we aren't able to accurately identify the total income from tuition, which has caused us to have a higher than anticipated revenue for many years. To make this calculation easier, we started over. We started by comparing the average daily membership to the actual membership of Mount Vernon students at AMS on October 1st, and found that the numbers were pretty spot on, with about a half a student extra on October 1st versus the average daily membership. Given that, we decided that the October 1st actual enrollment of Mount Vernon students was the way to go, especially since with this calculation, we would be using the actual number of students in the building and not a ratio of students that would change if Amherst had an increase of students move in. Then we moved on to the calculation. We worked through several different alternatives to allow both towns to better project the final tuition payment for budget planning and decided on the following. We will take the average of the cost per pupil number that is reported to the state DOE for the prior 2 years. For example, next year, which is FY22, the average would be taken for FY21 and FY20. With that, there's also a 5.6% increase cap in any given year, but that full amount is included in the average in the following year. This cap allows Mount Vernon, which is a very small town, to have time to budget and plan for a larger increase. We kept the formula for any capital projects the same, and the rate will also be based on the October 1st enrollment numbers instead of the old average daily membership model. Other changes in the agreement are about the coordination between the districts, which will allow for a better transition for all students. There will be a minimum of 2 interactive lessons during students' 6th grade year, allowing for better connection between the students. What this means is that the Mount Vernon Village School 6th graders will be doing an interactive lesson with our 6th graders. Like I said, it allows for a better connection between the students as they merge into 7th grade altogether. Testing data of Mount Vernon students will be presented at Mount Vernon School Board's meetings to ensure that their K6 curriculum is accurately preparing students for the middle school. The 6th grade teachers at both AMS and the Village School will have opportunities for joint curriculum planning and professional development, allowing for synchronization when possible. To aid in the transition for Mount Vernon students, each incoming Mount Vernon student will get a meaningful one-on-one social emotional frame discussion, with the results being reported back to the Mount Vernon School Board. The hope is that it will make sure students are adapting well to the new environment. This is a 5-year agreement with the option for a 5-year extension. If the plan is not extended and Mount Vernon creates a tuition agreement with another district, there will be a phase-out process allowing for students currently in AMS during the 2025 to 2026 school year to finish out their middle school years in the building. I'm going to stop sharing allow time for the public to use the raise their hand feature if they'd like to address this warrant article. Okay, seeing none, move on to the next one. Okay. We'll be renewing the lease agreement with the Brick School this year, also known as the SAU building. Here is the wording for the warrant article. Shall the district approve renewal of the lease agreement with the School Administrative Unit number 39 for the lease of the Brick School on School Street in the town of Amherst for the term of 5 years commencing on July 1st, 2021, in accordance with the proposed lease agreement on file with the school district clerk, and further to approve the right to renew for one additional term of 5 years by mutual agreement of the school board and the SAU. Majority vote required. So we're bringing this forward, the lease agreement with the SAU this year, because it will be for the SAU building and the property it sits on. Because during the review of the SAU budget, we found that the old lease agreement had actually expired. This is a 5-year agreement with a 5-year renewal option. The old agreement required a $30,000 need. Sorry, required $30,000 needed to be included in the SAU budget every year for maintenance and repairs on the building. If that wasn't used, that money needed to be put into a maintenance reserve fund. Although this was handy at the time because there was a list of maintenance items that needed to be addressed, it was decided that the mandate isn't necessary and it's better to just require the SAU to be responsible for all maintenance repairs on the building. Other than that, every part of the lease agreement has stayed the same, except for that $30,000 requirement. Each year they pay us $1. They are required to cover all taxes and all bills on the property. So, last opportunity for the public. If anybody has any questions regarding this particular warrant article, please use the raise your hand feature. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to share my screen one last time. Just to recap for everybody, this is the appropriation comparison for this year's warrant articles. It does show the bond agreement up at the top for FY21. It shows the changes between the FY21 and FY22 differences, and the totals at the bottom. Okay. I am going to stop sharing again. And at this time, I will give one last opportunity for public comment. Please use the raise your hand feature. Okay. I want to make the statement again that the board will be making a final vote on the wording of these warrant articles, as well as the recommendations to move them forward to deliberative at our January 19th meeting. And we are now done, and it is 8:14. We can close the public hearing and end the meeting. I think that's all I need to do, right, Christine?
I think so. I don't think you need to take a vote to close the public hearing. So I think you can just close the public hearing. I don't know if you want to do a roll call vote to end your board meeting.
Oh, yes, because all right. So let's do a roll call vote to end the board meeting, though. So, Tom?
Gothier, yes.
Josh? Couldn't hear you.
Sorry, Conklin, yes.
Okay. Ellen,
Ruchin, yes.
Terry,
Beam, yes, and really nice job, Tom and Beth. Thank you. That's a lot of talking on our behalf.
All right, it is 8:15 and the meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Are we staying here or going to another one?
This meeting is done. We can, there is a community meeting that's happening right now at the SAU level. That's where Adam had to disappear to, but this is it for us for the night. We can move on and we'll be having our meeting on January 19th. We'll be voting on warrant articles as mentioned.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you. Have a good night,
Thanks to
everybody.
everyone who signed in.
Yes, thank you for the
Thank you.
community that joined us.